If you're new to APIs, you might think that they're pretty complicated. But the truth is that anybody who is a little bit dedicated can learn how to use an API. So, what are APIs? APIs stand for Application Programming Interface, and they're essentially a way for different systems, different computer systems, to talk to one another. So, for example, let's say you were designing a connector in front that you wanted to talk to your CRM and give you some information about a customer contact. What you would do with an API is you would use a connector and set it up to where it's making what's known as an API request to the API, which has access to your CRM's backend system. And if you make that API request correctly, then the backend system will return an API response. And that response will contain information about the contact from your CRM that you're trying to get data from into Front's connector system. So that's kind of the basics of an API. You'll see terms like client and server, request, response. You'll need to prove who you are. You'll need to have credentials, to be able to exchange this information back and forth. But essentially, it's two computer systems talking to each other and exchanging data. You can think of a useful analogy to a restaurant. So when you are a client at a restaurant, you want to make an order. And so you might read a menu, and that's similar to how with APIs, you'll be doing a lot of reading developer docs. So you'll be reading the documentation in API to figure out which API endpoints that are available to you, which actions you can perform through the API, essentially. It's similar to being at a restaurant and not knowing what you can order. So you take a look at the menu, which is your documentation, and you decide what you'd like to order. You can make some substitutions based on what's on that menu, and you present your menu to your waiter, who takes that order and sends it to the back of the house. And that is essentially what an API request is the way you make a request in a restaurant to a waiter for your food order is the way a computer system will make a request to a backend system in order to get information back. So then once that request is made, in a restaurant, the chefs will cook the food and the waiter will bring it out to you. Or they might tell you that that item was not available and they're very sorry and you'll have to change your food order. So similarly with an API, what you'll do is you'll send your request and then the server will try to process it and it'll send you an API response back telling you what happened. Was it able to return that CRM customer account information? Or maybe there was an error in the request and it could not process it, so it returns an error message instead. So that's essentially APIs in a nutshell.